Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of NC-17. My name is Josh, and today we have writer, director, cinematographer, actor. This dude, he runs the gamut when it comes to making movies. We got Samuel Fronsman. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing, Josh? Thanks for having me on.
I'm pretty good, and it's my pleasure, my friend. So before we get into the meat and potatoes, the movies and all the good entertainment and everything like that, kind of take us back as a child. What really got you into wanting to do movies and stuff like that, or did that come later in life? And what was your first experiences with like movies and stuff?
So, some of my earliest experiences with movies were when growing up as a kid, we would have our family movie nights. We'd get Saturday nights, we'd go to the video store. Remember when that was a thing? Miss those days. And we would go and we would pick out a couple movies. And as I got older, I'd end up watching both of them. Used to be I'd watch the action movie, then my parents would watch the horror movie, and they'd send me to my room to watch like an animated Spider-Man film. But as I got older, I started watching a lot of horror movies, and so my meat and potatoes were really action films and horror films, and a lot of the time it was, a lot of times it was independent movies. At the time it was direct to DVD films. I know, for instance, like my dad, he was the big action guy, and he'd see Steven Seagal on the cover and say, "Oh, we got to rent this one." And over time, I think what really kind of drew me more into doing it myself, and I didn't really discover that I wanted to make movies until later in life when I started going to college. But I was always someone that was into the entertainment industry in one way, shape, or form. And for a long time, as a teenager, it was really music. That was kind of my foundational point, my starting off point. And like to this day, I still play guitar here and there. Not like I did, but I was always, big into that. And it came to a point where when I was going to college, I had to pick, something to major in. And at the time I said, well, I love music. How cool would it be to be on the radio and, be able to be a disc jockey? And so I went into the media program at University of Mount Union, was taking some classes, and got involved in their student media program doing radio. And it didn't take me long to realize that that's not what I wanted, especially when I then took a filmmaking class, and I was tasked with making a short film. And then I really fell in love with that. And I was like, this this is what I have to do for the rest of my life. This is from writing the script to casting the actors, being on set, actually shooting the movie, and putting it together in the editing room, and just bringing this thing to life. That it encapsulates every art form into one. When you think about it, you have, you look at theater, you look at literature, you look at cinematography, you look at music. All of it has to come together into one solid body of art and tell a story, and that's what really drew me to it. That's what I really loved.
Uh, so, that's awesome because I've spoken to a lot of people, and a lot of people like they've gone to school for it, and some are like I've learned it on my own and everything like that. So, in that transition from music to film, was it an easy transition, or was that a transition that was kind of like at times you thought maybe I'm not taking the right steps, or how did that all kind of like just translate?
Well, it's funny actually. My first thought process on the whole thing was, I said, "Hey, look at Rob Zombie. He does both." And so that was kind of what, like, initially was like my thought process. But then as I got more and more deeper into filmmaking, I started, just fading away from music, and I still, like I said, I'm a huge, rock metal guy. I still like to, just practice guitar for fun, but it really did end up becoming to where, like, filmmaking was huge. And the year that I got into it was such it was such a life-changing year for me, just in general with certain things I had going on in life, certain losses I had to deal with, and I needed something to cling to. And clinging to filmmaking, clinging to the classes that I was taking, and then going beyond that, because most of what I learned I didn't even learn in school. I learned on my own, just doing it, because I needed there was so much happening that year. I needed something to latch onto and cling to. And so transitioning to like fully doing, film, and that being like the main thing that like I dedicated my life to, it was also part of it was a coping mechanism for a lot that I was going through at the time.
Oh yeah. Uh, so you said previous that it was always action and horror. What kind of do you dabble in both, or is it kind of like you're one or the other?
I mean, there's influences of both into it. I'd say I'm more on the line of doing an action or a thriller movie than I would be to do straight horror. But like if I look at the one that I'm currently in development on, that's a detective thriller. I'm bringing in a lot of horror elements into it. I've kind of compared it, for a more contemporary film. I've compared it a little bit to the way that they handled Long Legs, in which it was very much a suspense, thriller dealing with, in the movie dealing with an FBI agent, but there was a lot of paranormal, supernatural aspects into it as well. And with what I'm doing right now, I'm bringing in a lot of the influence by bringing in vampires, but then still at the same time, I've said it's less vampire movie and more detective thriller, but with vampires in it.
Oh yeah. And that would be Crimson Knight, right?
Yes,
Yep.
Crimson Knight. That's the new one I'm working on right now.
Oh yeah. Uh, so kind of before we get into your other projects, let's talk about Crimson Knight because I'm obviously a horror fan. I am.
Right.
uh, so kind of walk us through what really gave you the idea of doing this kind of thriller that is based around a detective and vampires.
Well, it the original idea came from a class project from years ago when I was in school. And we had to come up with 50 movie ideas, and so I did that. And some of them were better than others, but the one that like stuck with me for a while, that I kept on the back burner until the right time came, was a detective is hunting down a serial killer that ends up finding out he's really a vampire. And that was just the general log line. That's what I had just on the shelf. As I got more into the local indie film scene in Northeast Ohio, I met not one, but two real life. And at the time when I met them, they were active duty on the force, two detectives that are also actors. And it just clicked. I'm like, how many people are fortunate enough to know two real life police detectives that are also actors for, low budget indie movies? I could do something that nobody's done before. I could make a detective thriller with two real life detectives. And so I went back to that idea I came up with years ago, and I pitched it to both James Belenka and Adam Joseph Turner, and they were sold. And I said, I want to write this, and I want to do it differently than how most people would tackle this genre. I want to do something where I'm being faithful and I'm being true to real law enforcement. I mean, if I'm going to go, off the rails and introduce, supernatural stuff like vampires, I want everything else to be very grounded and realistic. And so that's what we did. We took it. I would write parts of the script. I would send it to Adam and James to basically grade me on my accuracy. And then they would send me back notes. We would have a meeting, We talk it through. They would basically say, okay, this is what we would say here. This is what we would do here. Little small details that they would correct me on, like, when we would pull up to a crime scene, we wouldn't keep the lights flashing on the car because it's going to draw more of a crowd. That's just something they do in movies. And I'm like, I did not know that, but that's good to know. And we would even play games where I would act the part as one of the witnesses, and I'd have them question me like I was a witness at a crime scene. And so it's been this thing that's built over time to now I'm very happy with what the script that we have that we're going to take into production. And I think it's going to kind of shock people how we're kind of mixing a lot of realism in the police work and then still keeping some of the more fantastical elements of the supernatural, but making it as though if vampires were real, if vampires existed in the real world and, bodies were popping up, this is probably what would happen in real life if that was the case.
Uh, Sounds awesome. Sign me up when it's ready. I will definitely be watching it.
Thank you.
uh, so other than that, so the projects you've done before then, like, was there one that stands out to you, or is it every single one is like your, well, everyone is obviously like your own child, but like, which one would you say is not the redheaded stepchild?
Well, the one that probably means the most to me at the moment, aside from Crimsonite, looking at past projects, the one that means probably has the closest place in my heart is In the Hands of Fate, because
Mhm.
that was my first feature. That was my first full length feature film. I'd done some short films before that, but to take what started off as I mentioned how when I first was getting into it and I did my first short film, I dove headfirst into filmmaking just to lay it all on the table. That year when I did my first short film, Crossfire, was the year that my dad lost his battle to cancer, and so I I needed something to distract me. And so when I was done with that short film, I went right into writing a feature length script, and it went under a different name at the time. It was originally going to be called Belly of the Beast. Found out that was already a movie title. I try to avoid doing stuff like that, but I took what was a very poorly formatted, way too long, would have ended up like a 4 hour long movie. It would have almost had to be two movies at the time I first wrote it. And I took this screenplay and I held on to it and I said to myself, "This is awesome. I'm probably never going to make it." And then over time, when I started to get more connected in the local indie scene, I met an actor by the name of Stephen Shanti, and I was doing a movie up in Cleveland with him. And the first day that I met him, I said, "Oh, this man's Rocco." Like I had one conversation and I say to myself, this guy's Rocco for In the Hands of Fate. And if I don't make this movie now, I'm never going to find another actor that's going to envelop this character the way that this guy does. And it was almost like a sign telling me I need to just dive headfirst into it. And so that's what I did. And we fought a lot of funding challenges. I managed to scrape it together with what little budget we had, and what we ended up with was at the end of last year in December. I went back to my college to premiere this movie that was essentially founded on characters that I wrote for my very first short film, and then later expanded on. And now I can say I have a feature film under my belt. And now I'm not just making a movie, I'm making my second movie. And so In the Hands of Fate just is always going to have that place in my heart because it's such a personal film for me and what I was going through, even writing the first draft years ago.
Uh, so the the question that a lot of people have is, are you, like when you were first starting out, was you ambitious enough to try to write a full feature, or was you comfortable for the time being in short? Because me being a first time writer, I mean, that's what a lot of people are asking me. You're going feature first and then short? I was like, technically, I don't. Nothing against people who do shorts. I don't see myself being able to write just a short, if that makes sense. So was that
Hmm.
a battle for yourself, or was that kind of like a the building blocks of your foundation, short and then feature?
No, I'm more on the same line of thought that you are. I I did my first short film was like the very first thing I did, but immediately after that, I said that this isn't really meant to be a short. This is meant to be a feature. These characters are meant to be expanded on. And the very next thing that I did was write a feature length script, and it sat on the shelf and it collected dust for years. To be honest with you, when I did my next couple of short films, I did them more as a personal test to
Hmm.
test myself. Can I do this in when I made Hang In There, it was, can I do this, but now without the resources of my college? Can I do this on my own with just people that I networked with on Facebook? And when I passed that test, I finally told myself, okay, I have to do the feature now. And because it was always the biggest challenge I've had. And I have a lot of respect for people that can really, pump out short films. I've always had a difficult time with keeping a script short because I always want to keep writing. And my problem is I sometimes I never know when to stop writing. And so now I tell myself if I don't know the ending of the movie, don't start writing it. And so I always start now with the ending in mind. And I'm challenging myself in the meantime with trying to write shorter scripts just to kind of be able to exercise the filmmaking gears. But for me, short films are like that's me more doing something more experimental. It's more something of me wanting to prove something or test something out. But it's the feature films, the full length movies that really drive me the most.
Oh yeah. Uh, well, again, before we continue, I do want to say my condolences for you losing your dad. I lost my mom to cancer, so you know, and it you got to find those things you could grab onto to kind of not let you sink, if that makes sense. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, so in making your first feature, getting that under your belt, and having it premiere for the first time, what was that feeling like?
It was very surreal. It almost felt poetic, and the whole day it it felt kind of like not real life.
Yeah.
That's the best way to describe it. A huge shout out goes to my old professor from college, Dr. Adelina Cooper. She actually helped me run the entire thing, and the fact that I was able to have that as a venue, and it was nice because since I didn't have to pay for the venue, and because as an alumnus at the college, I didn't have to charge anyone for tickets either. And so it was really just a big celebration. I remember the way that that day kind of went. I actually picked up my buddy Richard, who was on the show last week. Um, Richard's awesome. He's my brother in arms when it comes to making movies. He and I are, if I'm not his DP for his movie, he's my DP for my movie, basically. And so we picked him up, went straight to the college. He was helping with getting everything set up as well. Met with my professor, and then once the guests started showing up, cast members, crew members, there were people that came, just friends, family, people I didn't even expect to show up, and it was very like surreal when I you took the stage and spoke, and then Dr. Cooper, she ran a Q&A afterwards, and I like went home after that, and I'm like, did this happen? I mean, what? Just a few years ago, I'm sitting here thinking I'll never make this movie, and here I am, and I just got back from my old college, and we showed it, and so That's what it was like. It was like walking through a fantasy, walking through a dream that I had to convince myself that this actually happened in real life.
Oh yeah. Uh, so let's kind of go a little bit, if you don't mind, let's go a little bit more personal. So during your career so far, have there been moments to where you're like, I'm in over my head, I need to take a step back, recoup, regenerate, come back stronger than ever? And if so, what really got you to the point where you were pretty much done for now?
There's definitely been plenty of moments. I'll be honest, and the very first time that I really kind of had something like that, where I ended up pushing myself through it all, but there was a point where I was gonna put the project on hold and try to come back later, and that was when I was raising the funds for In the Hands of Fate. I was running similar to what I'm doing now with Crimson Knight. I was running an Indiegogo, but at the time, that was my first movie. I really didn't have, a lot of clout, a lot of connections. I had, certain people that I'd helped with on their films before, but really, aside from people that were part of one of my other couple short films I did, no one really knew me. And so ultimately, the Indiegogo was a major failure. We barely raised any money. I might have raised enough to be able to feed people lunch for one day that we would have been on set for a shooting schedule I had blocked out to be 17 days. And so was gonna just I was gonna put it on the shelf. I was gonna say we're not doing it. We couldn't get the funding for it, but there was a few different people that were really close to the project that were already attached. Certain people like my mom, she's been part of it, kind of as like in the role of a line producer and slash first assistant director on a lot of things, kind of helping out behind the scenes and a little on set. She was like pushing me, like, you got to do this. Some of the cast that was already involved, Adam Turner, who I mentioned before, that's going to be still the lead for Crimson Knight, but he was my lead in the Hands of Fate, and he was pushing for it. Steve, he was pushing for it. Another guy, good friend of mine, close collaborator, Keith Migra, he was attached to the project from day one. He was pushing for it, saying we got to make this movie happen some way, somehow. And so that's what we did. We kept pushing through it. It was to the point where I did end up starting to pick up traction, not as much financially. A lot of the money, like I said, had to come out of my own personal account. And even still, it was almost entirely 100% complete volunteer project. Like everybody that came onto this movie said, we're not doing this for money. We're doing this because we read the script and we believe in the story. And so it was something that became less about me and more about the team. But for that moment, for that brief moment when the first Indiegogo completely failed, I was ready to say, yeah, well, guess we can't make the movie. Guess we'll try again in a few years or something. But I'm glad that I did force myself to keep going. And I'm really thankful to the people that became part of that and became part of that, what I call the In the Hands of Fate family, that are people that, if I have to this day, I'm working on something, those are the people that I'm making my first phone calls to before I put out a casting call or a crew call.
Oh yeah. You know, I do have to say, like, because you're in Ohio, we're here, I'm here in Michigan, and like, it's similar in the manner of filmmaking, especially beginning. But I will say that the independent community is probably one of the strongest communities, in my opinion, in the world, because they want to see the next person succeed, you know? And for everyone out there who's going to watch this, this is Minus Samuel's first time talking, and I want you to succeed. You know what I'm saying? And
Thank you.
oh, you're most welcome. the thing is, dreams are meant to be reached. They're goals that we can reach, you know. And hearing you say, like you almost, you had that thought, maybe we can't do this, financially, that's a burden that a lot of people in the independent scene actually come to, but the fact that you continued, you persevered and succeeded in making your first feature film, my hat's off to you, my friend, because there's a lot of people who would have folded and just was like, nope, you know. So that's a big congratulations to you, my friend. So it's
Thank you. Yeah, and like I said, a lot of that credit, like I said, goes to my mom, goes to Steve, Adam, Keith, the people that were like behind the project before I ever cast any other actors, before I got any more crew attached to it. It was that core foundation of people that were with it from the beginning, that were the first people attached to the movie, that basically came to me and said, no, don't give up. We're gonna stick with you no matter what happens. We're gonna see this through. We love what we're doing too much. And so that's really, I'll give a lot of the credit to them, because if I didn't have that support system, and it was, oh well, you didn't get the money, oh, better luck next time, then I don't know, would I be here today talking to you, or would I have thrown the whole filmmaking dream away and be working, just a 9 to 5, thinking what could have been.
uh, so let's kind of go one step further because now it's kind of beyond just filmmaking. You have your own production company, you know. So when you made that leap to just we're going to make a film, then all right, we're going to have a production company. What was that like, or was the production company always first and foremost? So then you have that outlet to be able to put your movies out.
Yeah, it was always something where I always started with the branding. I always thought, I coming up in this generation, with technology and social media as king. One of the things that, like, right off the bat, while I was still even going to school, was I need to establish a brand that I can use as an outlet, not just for my own passion projects, my own films, but there was a time where I was a camera operator for independent professional wrestling shows. At one point, I was doing. There was a time where I was helping to produce, shoot, and edit a web-based paranormal reality series, and I branded all of that under the Franz Productions umbrella, and started making YouTube videos kind of highlighting other projects in the independent film scene, whether I'm talking about other people's movies to help support other filmmakers, whether it's promotional videos for, for instance, like I have a lot of close connections with the local haunted house that I also act at, but then I'm also their video producer for them as well. And having that one umbrella, I can say this is Franz Productions. It was always part of the larger strategy of, if I can kind of keep everything under an umbrella and have a digital brand, then it'll be easier as I go forward. If I put in the grind and I put in the work now, as I go forward, I can get to a point where I have more of a built-in audience for other things I'm working on, versus if I try to start over with every project from scratch.
All right. Uh, so a lot of people, I mean, there's a lot of naysayers out there. Trust me, I found that out very quickly. But in the face of that, because I'm sure you've had some naysayers. In the face of that, how do you control yourself in the manner of proving them wrong and just going for it and succeeding? How do you overcome that adversity?
Well, the there's the honest answer and there's the right answer, but I'll combine them both.
All right.
But the truth of the matter is having really close friends that I can vent and get any of that off of my chest, and people that I can really confide in, and we can talk things out with each other and really support each other through some of those, kind of those rough patches. That's been huge. In the public eye, the biggest thing is it's a matter of, I tell people you can't make yourself not think about something, but you can make yourself think about something else. And so it's always about keeping my eye on the prize and focusing on what I'm doing. Because yeah, I've had bad reviews, and at the time it's like, wow, that sucks. But at the same token of it, even on YouTube, I'll put out shorts on YouTube that are kind of to funnel in traffic to some of the other videos on my channel. And you never know who it's going to reach, and some people love it and some people don't. And sometimes I look at the negative comments and I see, hey, at least people watched it, and that right there is a win in of itself. I'm never going to please everybody, and I can't set out to please everybody. I have a certain style to my films. And you can probably tell just looking at my background, big influence on me was Quentin Tarantino. Um, right there, if there's some people that can't stand Tarantino, and a lot of that influence shines into the dialogue that I write, into the types of plots that I like to do in my films. And so right off the bat, if you already don't agree with, like, you don't like my influences, then you're definitely not going to like my movies. And I can definitely live with that. I can accept that, and it doesn't bother me because everybody's got opinions. I'll put it like this: a good friend of mine, who's also a good friend of yours, James L. Edwards. I like to quote him. Okay, and what he said was, he said, "Sam, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one, and mine smells like vanilla cream." And that's the mentality I have.
Oh yeah. Speaking of James L. Edwards, me and him were kind of talking, and because I'm doing my first feature this year in November, and I kind of approached him to see if he was available, and times right now just didn't work out. Nothing bad, we that's my boy. That's my brother from another mother. He's been on my show multiple times. But I do want to take a moment, since you did mention Quentin Tarantino, the passing of Michael Madsen. I do, here at NC-17, we wish his family and friends all the best, and we give them our condolences. And we lost a good one. That dude was phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that one hit me hard. When I saw that. So yeah, my condolences go out to all of his friends and family. I mean, obviously, um, Reservoir Dogs was such a huge inspiration for me personally, and such a big part of what I said, I want to make movies like this. And his character in that as Mr. Blonde was like so fundamental to what made that movie stand out. Because one thing, I mean, Quentin's writing was top notch, but the performance, the way that he did the dance, and before he cut the cop's ear off, I mean, that was such an iconic moment in just cinema history. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, that one was rough, and he was young. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, that was he was still really young. So
Oh yeah. Yeah. So let's kind of touch up on, like the lifespan of a career, because some who just start out fizzle out just as quick as they started. So you doing what you've been doing, and you've been writing for a while now, and you've got some stuff out, and you're working on your second feature. Your career seems to be on an uphill, which is a good thing. Uh, I mean, but there's still going to be those bumps. We all hit those. Where do you see yourself 5 years from today?
5 years from today, so 2030. Well, I see myself working on my third feature, and the reason why I'm saying even 5 years from now on the third feature is, without going into details, I'm on my whole thought process, my whole focus right now is on Crimson Knight, and I want to shoot it and release it next year. But I already know what the one after that is going to be. I just don't want to say anything yet because it's my most ambitious idea yet. And I know it's going to take a lot more years in the oven to be able to cook that one than what I've done before. Because I have a really ambitious idea that only if I've told to just a few people. And so in 5 years, I'm planning to be working on that movie. Hopefully at that point, actually in production on it, but that one's gonna that one's gonna be a couple years after Crimson, just because it's gonna be bigger. It's gonna need a lot more time and development.
Oh yeah. Uh, Ambitions are what drive us. Like, even as children, we're like, we want to be the next best firefighter, professional wrestler, action star. So when people say to you, you're over ambitious, actually, first off, have they ever said that to you? And if so, what was your response to that?
Um, yeah, I've had a few people say, that maybe I might be a little bit over ambitious, and I say, well, you might be right, but if I don't try, then I'll never know. So I have to at least put myself out there and try. I'd rather try it. I'd rather fail, but I can at least say I tried than not go for it.
That kind of reminds me of a motto. I saw this at a job I used to work at. Like, it was just plastered on the wall. It is better to fail trying than succeed at doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I live that every day because I try to be a better person tomorrow than I am today. So, but I get that, and I believe being over ambitious helps you succeed because you don't want to let yourself down, much less anyone else down. You know, and in this process, sometimes the ambitions, they take on a life of themselves.
Yeah.
Uh, so let's talk about again, and this is entirely up to you if you want to talk about it. So you say your mom helps out. Has that strengthened the bond between the two of you, or was that bond always solidified?
Um, I'd say it's always been there. My mom and I've always had a great relationship. Obviously, when my father passed away, and it gave her something to kind of be part of as well, and she loves doing it. She'll be one of the first people to watch this video when it goes up. And I think it's really cool working with her on a professional level as well. Because it's something where it's like she didn't know that she wanted to be in working in the movie industry until I started doing it, and she started getting involved. And I mean, now it's like she's always like one of the co-producers, unit production managers. Like, she's always there. Like, a lot of times she's my first AD on set, just helping out with all the logistical things and helping to run it. And having that, having someone there where I can focus a lot more on the creative aspect of it and the storytelling, and then having someone to be there as a first AD or as a line producer that can really help with the the logistical aspects of it, and passing out release forms to people, helping with the catering, helping with craft services. It's super helpful, and I think it's definitely helped strengthen our bond quite a bit. And she's always usually involved in the development stages and the pre-production stages. Like she's one of the first people to read my scripts and give me feedback. And now sometimes we disagree, and sometimes we have to agree to disagree, like anything. She'll give me feedback, and 75% of it I'll say, hey, that's a great idea, I'll incorporate it. And then there'll be that 25% that she'll yell at me that I'm too stubborn, and I'm like, yeah, we just got to agree to disagree on that one. But it definitely helps, and like I said, and my mom's a huge part of it. I mentioned my good friend, I mentioned Richard earlier. He's another huge part of that behind the scenes, in terms of he's one of the first people I'll go to as well for advice and as a collaborator. Adam Turner, he's another one. He and I will go and talk and hash things out and collaborate together. Even on the makeup and effects side of it, Carissa Van Bogelen, she's literally, I call her the entire art department in one person. She's a costume designer. She's a special effects makeup artist. If you watch the proof of concept I did for Crimson Knight, she also can surprise everyone that she's also a ballet dancer. And so she's kind of everything. And so between her and Adam and Richard and my mom and all of us just kind of putting our heads together, helps out it helps out a lot, not trying to do everything on my own, but having a very close knit circle that I can bounce ideas off of with.
Oh yeah. Uh, so I want to give you the floor for a couple minutes to kind of give advice to people who are either trying to get into the industry, who are already in the industry, who are having problems. Just what advice would you give to anybody who's trying to succeed in this industry?
Well, what I would say, the very first thing that I would say is you have to figure out what it is you want out of it. If what you want is to write and direct, then you have to put yourself out there. You have to write a script. Um, I can say it helps to start with short films, but obviously you're jumping into it with the feature. I know another person, he jumped into it right with the feature, and some people, if that works, then do that. Don't take don't take no for an answer. Push. You gotta push, and you have to be. The biggest thing is you can't be shy. This is a people industry. There's only so much you can do by yourself. It helps when you go and network, and there's networking events in the Northeast Ohio area. There's a few. There's the Cleveland Indie Club that Johnny Woo runs. There's Greater Cleveland Film Commission puts on their mixers, and they have a lot of major cities, whether no matter what state you're in. Major cities have film commissions, but better than even those, I found, is when you go on Facebook and you look up film groups for your local region. So in my case, Northeast Ohio, like in your case, more Michigan, or for anyone, like wherever they're at, and just help out on somebody else's movie. Even if it's being a production assistant or just a, behind the scenes photographer, get your foot in the door, talk to people, because there's only so much you can do on your own. You need to build that network. You need to build that connection with people. But if you do that and you put yourself out there and you meet people, you'll find it's a very small community. And a lot of times, the people that you went onto their set and you helped them with their movie, maybe you were their camera operator, maybe you helped them with running sound, whatever you've done for them, even if you're just a background extra, but you talk to people, those people that you meet on other sets, those are going to, 9 times out of 10, those are the people that are going to then be on your set. They're going to come out there. They're going to help you on your set. A lot of not just crew, but even actors. There's a lot of actors that I met on other sets. I've mentioned Adam Turner. I met him on a set for a zombie movie called Scavenged. That was Andrew William Chapman did that movie, and we were shooting one of the scenes in that film where Adam's giving a monologue, and I was a camera operator that day. And just being there and hearing him deliver this like villainous speech, I was like, this guy right here he's my Donovan for In the Hands of Fate. And no sooner did he do that speech for Scavenge did I offer him Donovan. And then I come to find out that when he wasn't acting, he was a homicide detective. And so then I was like, well, I'm like, shoot, I've already met James Belenka up doing a different movie up in Cleveland. Now I know Adam. I'm like, I got to do Crimson. So that's just kind of it's all from being on other people's sets. You go on Facebook, you'll see, hey, crew call, we're looking for whatever, or you'll see a casting call and they're looking for actors. Help on other people's sets. Get on there, network. That's how you get out there. But you can't be shy. If you're shy, you'll never get anywhere because if you can't talk to people, there's only so much you can do by yourself in your bedroom.
Very true. Yeah. Uh, I 100% agree. You get a network. Uh, I went about it a little bit different, but I like to. This show has never been about me. It will never be about me. This is about the guests that come on. I mean, and you could be in any walk of life. If you need an outlet, that's what this show's for. But meeting so many fantastic people, awesome actors, directors, actresses, musicians, I mean, writers, cinematographers, the list goes on and on. This is how I network, if that makes sense, you know? And now you're part of the network because I'm pretty sure eventually we're going to have a conversation just because of some of the stuff I've seen you do. We won't tell nobody though. No, but no, it's people like you. It's people like all my past guests. Okay, almost all my past guests, but that make this community, this industry thrive. And I've said it in so many episodes, and I'm going to say it again. Hollywood has literally taken a backseat to independent film, especially since COVID. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and the imagination, the just everything that comes into the independent film, you can do so much more than Hollywood can. Because in Hollywood, you got all the office suits saying you can't do this, you can't say that, and you can't look like this. Independent, it's like you can pretty much do anything you really want as long as it's within the script and the film. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I do want to say though, your outlook is a refreshing outlook because a lot of people, and I've spoken to a lot of people, but nobody on the show. But a lot of people that I talk to in my personal circle, they don't look at things like you do and like a lot of other people do. They just like, I'm just gonna work my 9 to 5. Okay, that's a mundane life. I get it. You do what you got to do, but you doing what you do, everyone doing what they do in the independence. I think I've seen maybe at least this year I've seen well over 200 movies, a majority
Mm-hmm.
of them being independent films. So, yeah, I mean, there's a line of movies back here that are straight almost independent film, except for some big blockbusters, but those are like my favorites.
Right.
uh, but the next question is, what is your expectations for the rest of your career? Like, how many is there a certain amount of features you want to put out before you retire, or are you just taking it one feature at a time?
Yeah, I don't want to say. I mean, I've joked with people and said I'm just going to do what Tarantino did and say 10 movies and that's it. But I don't know if it'll be more than 10. I don't know if it'll be less than 10. I do know that any movie that I dedicate a few years out of my life to making, because and you're going into doing your first feature as well, so you get it. When you set out to do a project this big, it's a huge time commitment, it's a huge dedication, and you better love it, and it better be something you're passionate about. And so what I'll say, and I'm sorry, I had to move my phone a little bit because it's starting to overheat with my computer. But what I'll say is, any movie that I do make, my expectation is it's going to be one that I'm really passionate about the story, and it's going to be something that I absolutely just love, and I feel like people need to see. And so that was the case within the Hands of Fate. That's the case with Crimson Knight. And I said I already know what the next one's going to be after that. Past that, I don't know, but I have ideas. It's just my expectation is that whatever I set on, it's not going to be something that's a spur of the moment. Oh wow, I just had this idea, and then end up not loving it and just going through the motions. It's always going to be something that I look at and say, I have to tell this story. The world needs.
Oh, he froze. We hope he can come back. Uh, oh, technical difficulties. Give us 1 minute. Okay. And we lost him. Maybe he'll come back. Uh, let's, yeah. So we hope he is able to come back. But in the meantime, I will say that, oh, here he is.
Okay, I'm back.
Uh,
What,
you
what
can't see you though, but that's cool.
I say, my phone, which was I was using it as my camera, completely overheated and crashed, and I was like, oh shoot.
All right, no, you're good.
Yeah, hopefully I can get my camera working again. It's weird. My laptop camera doesn't work anymore, so I always have to use my phone as a camera.
Oh,
And the problem is when I'm running that, eventually sometimes I have a overheating issue. So
all right. Oh no, you're good. You're good. Uh, we were actually coming to the end of the show, but I am going to give you the floor to talk about your socials where people can or cannot reach out to you. Plug where they can see your movies, and if you have any DVDs, Blu-rays, or anything like that, where they can purchase them. Floor is yours for the next couple minutes, and yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So, on Facebook, you can follow either of my movie pages for In the Hands of Fate, which on that one, it's In the Hands of Fate movie. You could also follow Crimson Knight to keep up to date with the newest one that I'm working on. We're also running an Indiegogo campaign for Crimson Knight. So, if you want to help support that film, definitely that would be fantastic if you support, whether you contribute or share the campaign for Crimson Knight. In the Hands of Fate is streaming on Fossum as well as Reveal. And we also have DVD physical copies available on samfronsman.weebly.com. So, any way that you want to, support the Franz Productions brand, support some of what I'm doing and some of what we're doing at Franz Productions in general. Those would be the best places to check out what we've done within the Hands of Fate or what we're currently doing with Crimson Knight.
Uh, uh, I want to thank you, Samuel, for. Is it all right if I call you Sam?
Yeah, you can call me Sam. That's what most people will call me Sam.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Sam. I'm pretty sure we definitely will be talking again. And once you have, once you've been on NC-17, you have a home with NC-17. Whether it's to come out and plug your movies, your socials, talk about movies, or just say, Josh, you got a booger in your nose, but I clean it out every day. So,
Well, if I did have a booger in my nose, that's the only good news. If my camera's off, is no one would have to keep staring at it.
oh yeah. But it's been an honor, my friend, and everyone make sure you go and follow his pages on Facebook. Go to Sam Fronsman Weebly and buy his movies. Uh,
Yep.
yeah, sometimes I overtalk.
Oh, you're good. No, I can be the exact same way. In fact, somebody's told me before that, like, and I'm especially this way on set. If you ask, he's like, if we got to be careful what we ask you, because we can ask you, where do you want us to set the light, and next thing you know, you're giving us the entire backstory of what the lighting schemes means to the overall narrative of the movie, and why you need it to be this certain emotion. And by the way, here's a history lesson on 3-point lighting technique.
Yeah, well, my wife says I talk too much. Yeah, but it's been an honor, my friend. Please stick around after we're done recording so we can have a quick talk real quick. And
Absolutely.
and everybody, till next time, stay NC-17.